Welcome to Your Family's Health. This is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard, and I'm here along with two nursing students, Stephen Hines and Tiffany Yu. We're from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College. Your Family's Health is a program that focuses on healthcare issues and resources available here in Nassau County. On the show, we will be speaking to experts from around the country to keep you up to date on current healthcare issues and trends. Today, we will be speaking to Dr. Shuvendu Sen about his book, Why Buddha Never Had Alzheimer's. So if you want to know more about how to stay healthy in Nassau County, stay tuned for the next half hour to the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Welcome to the show, Dr. Sen.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm very happy. It's a pleasure to be invited.
Likewise. So we're going to be asking you some questions. Tell me about what brought you to writing this intriguing book.
Well, there was a personal reason, and then subsequently it became a compelling professional reason. I mean, it all started with my grandmother, and I'm talking about easily 30 years back. And she was a very scholarly person, and she was an author. And then quite all of a sudden, when at a time when we did not have much understanding about this Alzheimer's disease, she actually left the home. And she could not find her way back. And almost after 48 hours, we rescued her. And when she came back, she had absolutely no recognition of anyone, including herself. And she was eventually diagnosed very sketchily as Alzheimer's disease. And I have this question that for someone who was as erudite, as scholarly as my grandmother, who was always with books, how could she become a vegetable, a functional ruin overnight? Now, 30 years down the road, I have these same questions, and they are still unanswered. So we are dealing with a disease, we are dealing with a disease that we are still struggling, we are still scratching the surface. We do not have a full understanding of the disease. And yet it has become almost like an epidemic. Almost every third or the fourth household, they are getting all the signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's. So, and yes, it was started off with a personal reason, but now as a physician myself, I felt that it's imperative to address all these issues and possibly look for any light at the end of the tunnel.
Dr. Sen, what kind of research did you do before beginning your book?
Yeah, my research was all, based on patients. There were so many patients who came with the early signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's. And the type of research that we usually indulge here are mainly on holistic measures. You place the patients on some holistic measures. Let's say in my book, it's meditation. And now we are at a time where we are blessed with modern technologies, and through these PET scans and functional MRIs, we can actually map the activities of the brain. And we found through all this research that those individuals, when they underwent meditation for a period of time, they had remarkable improvement in exactly those areas which get damaged in Alzheimer's. And I'll be a little more precise here. There are certain areas in the brain which are of interest to us. For example, there is something that we call as a left hippocampus, something that we call as a premedial frontal cortex. Those are the areas that get hit badly. You have the deposition of these abnormal proteins in Alzheimer's. And we found, lo and behold, that those who underwent meditation for a substantial period of time, they were actually showing greater neuronal activity in the brain. So these are the research that we do, and it's been done in some of the most top and renowned institutions in the world. I have been in touch with Dr. John Denninger. He's the chief of Mind Body Institute at Harvard University. As a matter of fact, he wrote in my book also, and he's been heading a similar research. And then there are many, all across the globe, and they have been all very, very exciting.
Hi, Dr. Sen.
Hello.
If you know you have the genes or experienced them in your family with Alzheimer's, do you recommend to start meditation earlier to prevent Alzheimer's disease?
Excellent. Not just the genes. We actually now prescribing meditation as a preventive measure to anyone and everyone for two reasons. And you're right. To answer your question squarely, yes, we would definitely recommend, because there are certain genes which has been implicated for the early development of Alzheimer's. And we should be more aware of all those genes. We should be educating ourselves more that, yes, we are a fraction of a population who would carry these genes, and we would have a greater propensity to have this disease. But that's a small number. There's a huge number outside this, genetic predisposition who would develop this disease. And we are really not sure what causes the disease, which is why I started by saying that we are still scratching the surface. We have identified certain risk factors. And very interestingly, those are the same risk factors for the cardiovascular diseases. So basically high cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes. But of all the risk factors that we talk about, stress is hogging the limelight, So there are so many risk factors that we are entertaining, and the repertoire is so much that we actually advise anyone and everyone to learn meditation, which is not very complicated. It's very user-friendly. You don't really have to sit in a lotus position like Buddha. You could just sit in a comfortable position just about anywhere and just concentrate and just follow some breathing techniques. And that's it. You start your meditative process. And yes, we actually are now proposing and prescribing everyone to start meditation.
Interesting, Dr. Sen. In your book, you discuss two types of meditation, focused attention meditation and open monitoring meditation. Have you seen greater success in using one technique over the other?
Actually, no. I'll be honest with you. There are just two ways of approaching the same truth, depending upon individuals. And it's a great question, actually. For some of us, let's say Transcendental Meditation. Transcendental Meditation is more about, concentrating on an object, or there's a certain word that we give, which in the Indian language is known as a mantra, and you just kind of repeatedly, you use that word, and while you're using the word, you're concentrating on a particular object, and the object could be anything. It could be a flame of a candle, it could be a picture, it could be or just about anything where you can focus on. That's one. And you will find that there are certain individuals who are very, very comfortable in doing that. They can close their eyes and they can concentrate. But you also have another set of individuals who are not that, good in concentrating. They would be very good in going through what we call as mindfulness meditation. Mindfulness meditation, by definition, we call it as a non-judgmental awareness. Now, that's a mouthful. What it means is that you're just sitting, and you're observing where you're sitting, but you're not making any judgment, right? You're not making a judgment, oh, it's very cold, it's very hot, it's the morning, it's in the evening. You're just aware of your surroundings, and you just let it be like this, and you just breathe. You breathe in, you hold your breath for a few seconds, and you breathe out. And this entire process of breathing in and breathing out is a very comfortable process. You just have to make sure that you're, placed comfortably, seated comfortably, you're away from the obvious distractions. And some people, a lot of them actually prefer this type because then that effort of concentrating is not there. So yes, to answer to your question, these are just the two paths leading to the same truth, to the same verdict, and it's all very individualistic.
So you would say that you should do both, or it depends upon the personality and the person for which you would choose?
Absolutely, depends upon the personality of the person, and they can choose to do both. Some I have come across people who are comfortable in either of them, and they can easily alternate from one mode to the other. Possible, but I would say that someone who personally I do mindfulness meditation, that once you get comfortable with one path, it's better to stick to it, and it kind of gets more user-friendly rather than constantly shifting from one end to the other.
On page 69, you speak about your father-in-law and how he started meditating, that it calms his head. Is that where you got your idea to start prescribing it?
Yes and no. It's yes to the fact that it was my first practical example, and no that I've already been introduced to it, and I have been hearing excellent stories of how others have incorporated meditation as a practice and how they have been tremendously benefited by this process. But then, yes, this was my first-hand patient to begin with. And then, it's very interesting question that you asked, because I can take it to another level. I made a very random, informal survey amongst physicians in this country, in asking them about, do you know that, there is meditation, there is yoga, and these are hotly pursued and researched at Harvard University, Johns Hopkins, Oxford, all over. And almost 99.99% of them, they answered yes or no. And then came my next question, and I asked, do you implement? As an internist or as a psychiatrist or as a neurologist, do you implement? And a 90% replied no. So this is almost like a mindset where all of us, we are aware, but we kind of keep it as an intellectual treasure. And that little journey to convert this university research finding to a practical prescription, the journey is taking such an awful lot of time. I mean, these researches have been going on for the last 2 decades. And yet we know that we are scratching the surface. I mean, we got about 2 to 3 FDA-approved drugs, very appropriately approved by FDA. But we all know that these drugs, they don't cure Alzheimer's. They don't turn the tide back, and then the long-term results of these trials have been quite disappointing. We're still trying hard, and I'm sure there will be a light at the end of the tunnel. But as of now, we got something which is very profound, which is without any adverse effects. And it could be started at any age.
That's very interesting. What kind of drugs are usually prescribed to people that are experiencing the onset of Alzheimer's disease?
There are 2 drugs in the market. One is called Aricept, ARICEPT, and the other one is called Namanda, NAMANDA. Both these drugs, they underwent trials. Both these drugs showed benefit in the shorter versions, but once the trials were extended, like let's say I've given Namanda to a patient and then I'm following the patient up after 5 and 6 years, they kind of plateau. They don't show any benefits whatsoever. And it's a hard nut to crack because, Alzheimer's is a little different from other diseases. Like, let's say depression. You and I know what depression is. It's a very, straightforward presentation. You and I will know what is a bipolar disease. With Alzheimer's, it's a very complicated package. It's not just about, I don't know where my bathroom is, or I don't know how to start my car. Alzheimer's can present with anything. I mean, the word finding, difficulty in finding the right words could be one of the presentations of Alzheimer's, and that can come years before you don't know where your bathroom is. For instance, the person who would say that I would like to have, let's say, toast, or an omelette, or a juice, or a pancake for breakfast, he slowly loses those words, and he just says, I would like to have my breakfast. Now, what happens is that it's a perfectly legitimate term. Because it's breakfast. So the family they don't realize it. Everybody, it escapes the attention of everyone. But all this while, this gentleman is forgetting those intricate details, the nickels and the dimes of a breakfast. So that's what I'm trying to say, that the presentation could be this word-finding problem. The presentation could be many Alzheimer's patients, they present with depression. Many Alzheimer's patients, they present with problem with hearing, problem with smelling, difficulty in falling asleep. These are all considered to be very subtle, slender signs and symptoms. Before that, I don't know where my bathroom is comes. So
it's very hard for the family member to sometimes identify that a patient may have early onset of Alzheimer's.
You're so correct. Right. And that has been the biggest challenge. Yes. Because for us, the understanding of Alzheimer's, the recognition of Alzheimer's, the realization of Alzheimer's only comes when it becomes very advanced and very florid, when you pick up the guy who does not know how to switch on the fan. So, but much and years before that, God only knows how many of us are walking in the street with a potential Alzheimer's within us.
Is it possible to have these neurofibrillary tangles of Alzheimer's and not be symptomatic?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brilliant question. There is something which is known as mild cognitive impairment, MCI, which is considered to be a very, very early stage of an Alzheimer's. Now, these patients of MCI, they would have the presence of